Michelle Butler. Welcome to another episode on Eat, Move, Be Healthy. We've been doing this series on gut health, and today I have with me Nicole Ferguson from the Bodyworks practice in Epsom, not far from my studio here in Oxford. Welcome, Nicole.
Hi, thank you.
Nicole is a naturopath and has a private practice where she specializes in nutritional therapy, herbal medicine, iridology, cleansing programs, and uses lab testing to confirm and investigate a whole lot of number of health concerns. One of the things that Nicole specializes in is colonic irrigation. It's quite a specialized treatment, and I've referred quite a few clients to her specifically for that. And we're going to go into that with Nicole, the ins and the outs of it, demystify it completely, because it's a fantastic treatment. But before we get to that, Nicole, I wanted to chat with you just about why, I mean, gut health, there's any advert you see, there's products all over the place. Gut health is a real focus of most health programs nowadays. Why do you think gut health is so important? Why is it so important?
Yeah, I think it is becoming a lot more mainstream now. Everyone knows the importance of gut health. And the main reasons behind it is that we've got 80% of our immune system is connected onto our gut. Mm-hmm. So if our gut function isn't working properly, then it's going to have a knock-on effect onto our immune system as well, which then causes all types of inflammatory diseases, which is where I think most diseases stem from, really.
Because particularly, I mean, we've linked obviously the rise in food allergies, food sensitivities, intolerances, my son being one of those, eczema, and those are inflammatory conditions. That's again down to the gut bacteria being sort of out of sync.
Yeah, I guess there's like a few different ways we can look at it. So definitely the gut bacteria will be out of sync if we are seeing any type of inflammatory condition. Also, the skin is a detox pathway. So if the digestive system is compromised, and certainly the elimination part of the digestive system, then the other detox organs will take a hit. So that does include the liver, the skin, so we're seeing a lot of skin conditions, the lungs, and also the kidneys as well.
And the irony about those organs that you mentioned, so when you have skin conditions, you know, because they're unsightly, they're itchy, they're uncomfortable, there's just this desperation just to cover up, make it go away. But ironically, it is, if you can bear it and allow it to sort of run its course, sometimes it's almost better to let it flush out. The same thing with when the liver takes strain. I mean, you feel your energy goes, you just feel rough, and it makes you reach for those quick fixes. And then again, also the chest, another way of eliminating, runny noses, streaming colds. Those sometimes, to a certain extent, can be useful to just allow to run their course. But you understand fully, and believe me, I've been there, when those symptoms are that uncomfortable, you'll do anything just to cover it up, make it go away.
Yeah, and I think we all do to a certain degree. I think especially as we're older, stress has a huge impact on our digestive system. I'm sure you'll go into it at some point through these talks, but the effect of cortisol and how it's dampening the immune system and also causing leaky gut in the small intestine as well.
Now, you talk about the inflammatory conditions. There can also be inflammation in the gut, right? And then I understand then that of course affects the ability for the gut, well, the intestine anyway, to absorb nutrients. So then your health is further compromised.
Yeah. So, I mean, the digestive system kind of works in three parts. So we've got digestion in the top part. So we have enzymes in our mouth, which break our carbohydrates down. Our hydrochloric acid in our stomach, which is designed to break our protein down. And then we have enzymes in the small intestine for our fat. So the upper part is our digestion. Okay. Then the next part is our small intestine, where we're absorbing. And this is where we can get inflammatory conditions. Right. And also in the lower colon or the large intestine, the bowel, where we also get inflammatory conditions. So if the small intestine and the gut are affected, then it's like having an ulcer. You're just not going to be absorbing those nutrients in that area, and then everything starts to decline in function.
So then that would also explain why. So when we look at treatment for these, the typical thing, and everybody knows to reach for is, probiotics, they're the sort of cure-all. But there can be a time and an incorrect time and place to be using or taking the probiotics, correct?
Yeah. And I think there's now papers coming out, probiotics are bad. I think that's where, we need to seek professional advice rather than just self-medicating. So often, if you're feeling awful after taking probiotics or prebiotics, which are which help the probiotics grow, we'd really be looking at the small intestine. So there's a condition called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And it's really just that bacteria is in the wrong place. So it's come from your colon and it's sitting in the small intestine. So if you take a probiotic and you feel awful, you know that you're feeding this bacteria. So really probiotics, the SIBO, are, in my case, I would say a no-no.
Yeah.
But colonics, you can go the other way with probiotics. So you can kind of miss that area.
You can miss that area. So that's the other treatment, common, well, not common, actually, it's not common, that's the irony. The treatment for an out of sync gut flora is the colonics. Now, for a start, there's not many people that do it. There's quite a lot of regulation. Let's just get that out the way. There's quite a lot of regulation involved. I know your practice, you've got a whole special water tank facility set up, and that's it's very well regulated, very hygienic, very clean. But explain to us what exactly the colonic irrigation, the treatment, what is involved, what is it?
So it's working on the large intestine, which is the bowel. So it's working on the elimination part of the digestive system. It doesn't work on the small intestine, and it certainly doesn't come up to the stomach.
So the water's not coming up.
Yeah. So it's really just working on the large intestine. So the large intestine is around about 5 to 6 feet long, and is usually about 2.5 centimeters wide.
Okay.
If people suffer from constipation, and certainly if it's chronic constipation, and the bowel can start stretching.
Oh wow! No wonder it feels so uncomfortable.
Yeah. So if you've got 5 to 6 feet long,
wow,
potentially full of poop, then you're going to be feeling quite unwell. And this is where colonics can help, not only with constipation, also with diarrhea. Sometimes that can be from chronic constipation, so where the stools are then leaking around the outside of the stomach. But can also just be from chronic diarrhea where someone's going, 5 times or plus every day. And we just have to re-regulate or re-establish.
Just sort of give it, I always see it, and when I've had the treatment, I always see it as a little bit of just a reset. Your body can do it. It's sometimes just it gets a little bit misdirected, or your eating's out of sync. But so essentially, where the pipe goes in, and water goes up, but like you say, only through the large intestine, not as high. It's just not like it's going to be coming up here.
Yeah. There's a valve at the initial part of our colon, but at the end part where the water goes, called the ileocecal valve. So that will stop the water going any further in.
Yeah.
The tube itself, it goes up about 2.5 centimeters, something like that.
And you don't feel that. I mean, this is getting really graphic now, but honestly, you don't feel it. You don't.
Yeah. And I think that's, in terms of men, they have like, oh my goodness, I'm going to have a tube in my bottom, but it's not as bad as what you think it's going to be. And usually once the tube's in and the water's on, people just don't feel it.
No, you're never really aware, you're not aware of the pipe, but you are aware of the water going in, but that's quite a soothing sensation, bizarrely. It's not uncomfortable in any way. Okay, so then you also have the thing, so the water goes in and then obviously is allowed to flush out.
Yeah, so it's in out the whole time. So you're never really holding it unless I or the colon hydrotherapist is doing something. So water's going in, out. So your bowel's main job is to absorb water.
Oh, right.
So if the water's going in and out, you will slowly get absorption into the bowel, and it starts to make the bowel more flexible, so stools will come out. When we drink water, it won't hydrate constipated stools in the bowel. So a lot of people are like, I go and drinking loads of water, I'm feeling really bloated. You can't hydrate a stool by drinking water this way. You can only hydrate get the stool out by water going up.
Okay, so the water's going in and out all the time, and you're just eventually encouraging the colon to sort of let go and release, breaking up whatever's in there.
So you'll feel me or whoever it is pulsing, and that's us mimicking your bowel's movement called peristalsis. So you'll feel it more exaggerated when you're having chronic. It's not painful, it's just weird. So
it's just a sensation. Yeah.
So that starts to get the bowel to wake up and rehabilitates the nerve endings on the outer side of the bowel. So the bowel's made of 5 layers of muscle, so it's really just about rehabilitation.
Okay.
And then sometimes you'll feel as filling. So it means the water's going into the bowel and not coming out. So by doing that, the water goes into the bowel, it starts to make it full, it reaches some stools, and then the water comes out, bringing the stools out with it. For me personally, I'd always work with the client. So I would say, let me know when you're full, and you'll know exactly what it feels like. Yeah. Some other practitioners will feel to how they feel, because you can feel it at the bottom as well. Personally, I just rather work with the client.
Yeah, I know you give everybody the option, and I choose, maybe because I just have a morbid interest, but I choose to be able to see what's coming out, and it's actually, it teaches you so much about, just me anyway, about what you're digesting, what you're not digesting, what are you looking for when that's coming out through the tube.
So we can't really diagnose anything when we're looking through the stool. You can see if there's a potential dysbiosis, which is just where the good and bad bacteria aren't in balance. So there'll be a lot of bubbling and often quite a lot of clouding on the tube. Okay. We can potentially see how the liver's functioning. So if there's a lot of skid marks on the tube, or there's how the liver's functioning. But generally, we're kind of looking at the colour. So is it a good brown colour? And the consistency. So this is where we kind of look at the Bristol stool scale. So
yeah, is that, I had that on, I mean, my poor son is going to be in therapy for years to come, but I had the Bristol stool chart. You can just Google it. There's tons of little pictures of it. And which is really just shows a scale of what your stool should look like. And if it's tending to one shape, size or color, then that's tending to constipation, or the other way to diarrhea, and it kind of gives you an idea of what your stool should look like. And I had that on the back of the loo door for years. And my son will, and we frequently have the poo conversation. And I don't think, I mean, I do it with clients too, and at first they sort of cringe, but then actually people are pretty relieved too, because that's the one thing, if somebody isn't body aware, the one thing they do know is what their bowels are doing. I tell you, that is one thing I've noticed with clients. And you'll say to them, does your back hurt when you do this or when you do that? Oh, I don't really know. If you say to them, how often do you go? They can tell you when, how, everything. So it's the one thing that people do notice, and it's worth keeping an eye on, right?
Yes, it's so important. No, it's determining how food is going into your body, how you're utilising and how you're eliminating it. It's like the number one, I would say, most important thing to our health.
Yeah. So it quite quickly can reflect what's happening inside. Well, first let's start with, how often should you be going?
So the NHS say 3 times a week is normal.
Oh no.
Ideally we would say meal in, meal out. So if you are having breakfast, lunch, dinner, then because it's encouraging this movement all the way through your digestive system, you would like to think it's encouraging a bowel movement to come out.
Okay.
I would say if you're going at least once a day, then that's great. If you're going 3 times after meals, perfect. If you're going more than that and the consistency is becoming quite loose, that's too much. But if you're not really going once a day, it's like going to the toilet, having a poo, not flushing the chain, shutting the door though, and then coming back a few days later
and just adding
exactly what happens in your digestive system. So ideally 3 times a day, if not once a day. If it's not going that often, then we really need to kind of investigate why, really.
And again, getting very gross, but somebody has to do it, because where else are you going to hear this kind of conversation? So is strong smelling poo an indication of something going off, or should it smell like the food you ate? I mean, I don't know. Is there any indication on the smell?
Yeah. So we are what we eat, aren't we?
Yeah.
If it's really, really foul smelling, then you would know that there's something going on with the gut bacteria, possibly the liver as well, because the gut and liver are so closely connected. If it's smelling really sulphurous and egg-like, then, we'd also probably be looking at the small intestine as well, but that there's fermentation going on. Often we would say if your farts are really smelly, then we'll be looking at your protein digestion, so looking at how your hydrochloric acid is. It's less smelly, but you're getting gas quite frequently, then we're looking at your carbohydrate breakdown, so how you're breaking down.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So very smelly protein breakdown, less smelly but frequent wind is carbohydrate breakdown.
Yeah, not always, because it depends on what gases we're producing.
Sure.
But that's on a very simplistic level,
Good. And then other typical symptoms are bloating. everybody knows what that feels like, bloating, the gas, very windy, but also, and this is a discussion we had a while ago about if it's this end, so wind, burping, that kind of thing. You said it can often be related to, okay, not always necessarily, but can quite often be related to then the small intestine, which is sort of higher up.
Yeah, so which is SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth.
SIB.
So often people will get a lot of burping. It can also feel like they've got a lot of reflux where the gases are actually pushing up on the stomach and then making your
that like indigestion feeling, would that be how the person describes it?
Yeah.
And then, so what's happening with reflux then? What's the mechanism there?
So reflux is usually low stomach acid.
Yeah.
So you go to the doctor, you say, I've got reflux, which is potentially a lot of low stomach acid. Very, very rarely is it because we're producing high stomach acids. It's just being produced in the wrong place, or a food isn't agreeing with you and it's causing more because your hydrochloric acid is an antibacterial. So it's causing more to try and get the bacteria out, or there's something, be it structural or if it's a gas pushing, so your small intestine is pushing on the stomach.
Now the irony is antacids, the irony then is antacids reduce the hydrochloric acid production further, which then stimulates your body to, the whole thing.
It's making it so much worse. So you're then stopping stomach acid on a more than likely low stomach acid environment anyway. So your stomach acid's main job is to clean food, to stop any bacteria moving further into your digestive system and protein breakdown. If you're not getting those, and then so you're taking the antacid on an already low stomach acid environment, the bacteria is then moving into the small intestine and causing big, potentially bad bacteria overgrowth. But also if your protein isn't being broken down properly, remember 80% of your immune system is connected onto your gut. When protein starts going into the immune system, that's where we start getting things like autoimmune conditions and potentially cancers as well.
Okay, so the Bristol stool chart, that's been around for years. Is that still relevant, valid? I mean, is that still quite a fairly good indicator?
So I mean, it's really, I think, can't remember, off the top of my head, I'm sure it starts loose and then goes to pebbles, or it's the other way around, but really you just want to be sitting in the middle.
Yes.
You know, if it's really pebbly, it's a great example, and that's never going to change because our poo health should never really change. So if it's really pebbly, like rabbit droppings, then you're chronically constipated. And if it's coming out like water with lots of food pieces in it, you're just not absorbing it.
No, so you want somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And is it true to say, I mean, what's even interesting, even if your poos are whole and sort of packed together in proper little logs, if they struggle to flush, that would mean that there's quite a bit of air trapped in there. Is that relevant at all, or an indicator much?
In a colonic it can be, so if it's not coming out then suddenly you get loads of air bubbles because you can change the shape of the stools but not of the air. But if you're sitting on the loo and it's hard to flush, it's either just a huge poo and that, confirming the shape of your colon. But if it's really sticky and causing like skid, then that's definitely bad bacteria and possibly compromised liver as well.
That's interesting, the skid mark things, because I mean, you only have to my poor son is going to be in treatment but you only have to enter into the loo sometimes after a teenager to think, what the hell is going on here? But I encourage people to get into the habit of get up from the loo, turn around, have a look before you flush, so you can notice the difference from one thing to the next, and notice that. Now the other thing is enemas. What's the difference between colonic hydrotherapy and an enema?
So with a colonic, we aim to get all the way around the colon. So ideally, the whole 6 foot. It doesn't usually happen on the first treatment. So to come all the way around to the ileocecal valve, so before it enters the small intestine. With an enema, you're just working on the lower part of the bowel. So you're working, it's called the sigmoid, which kind of sits on the lower left part of your abdomen. And really, the enema would just sit there. So it's water and then comes splashing out. Okay. Within a colonic, we can do ideally the whole bowel, and so then we can do like herbal enemas and things like that, or coffee.
Oh yeah, because you've done that before. Then when you then add some herbal treatments and stuff, which can be absorbed there straight away. But why would one do an enema then? Is that just to stimulate movement?
I mean, enemas and bowel cleansing have been around for thousands of years. So people will just use them as part of either like a religious ceremony. Doctors will use it just to clear an enema to clear the lower part of the bowel for all sorts of type of investigations that they're doing. But, you know, even doing a home enema is great because you're not making the bowel lazy. You're kind of stretching it, rehabilitating it, and then letting it go. If you do it every day, then that's not great. But say once a week, once a month, something like that. So you're just encouraging all these hard stools that are sitting at the bottom of the bowel waiting to come out. You're encouraging them to move so then everything else can move around a lot easier.
So then talk to me about laxatives and why. My logic why they're not a good idea is because all they'll do is relax the colon so that there's no resistance.
Yeah.
But you're not ever, in your words, rehabilitate. You're not getting it to get back. Is that the danger there?
Yeah. So I think where I was saying kind of, you know, enemas and things that have been around for thousands of years, and then we moved into this pharmaceutical world. And we've got more and more illnesses now. But we've started to rely on pharmaceuticals, so laxatives, to start moving things from the bowel. It also starts getting the small intestine start to work as well. But it's either stimulating too much and it's just purging everything through. But it's not exercising, like you say. So it's making the bowel lazy. So usually if you find one Laxido is going to work, give it a couple of weeks, you're going to need two. Now I've had people that are trying to take Picolax to get their bowel moving, which purges you for a colonoscopy, and it does nothing.
That's the danger, and it becomes and this is what I say with all these symptoms, and I know it's hard. Listen, I know firsthand it's difficult. With all these symptoms, they're all nobody likes to be constipated or have diarrhea. But sometimes, to a certain extent, you've got to let the body clear out. And if you take too much control of that or don't let it do it, it's only going to kind of come out in some other way. Yeah. So yes, I mean, like you say, you use a laxative, you're desperate, use that, and then or even Imodium. I know that I've never used it actually, but to sort of stop you. Same thing. It's a sticking plaster just for then and there. You know, if you find you're having to use those all the time, you know, it means the bowel's not functioning as it should. Yeah.
If you're getting a lot of diarrhea, then really, you need to be looking at food intolerances, or have you got some kind of.
And if food's shifting through you like that, you're not that like in and out. You're not absorbing any nutrients, so your health will certainly suffer. Yeah,
it will do, certainly. Yeah.
And then typically, and you mentioned before, obviously stress stress having a big effect on the bowel. But also, if you think of stress and anxiety, quite common symptom there is stomach aches, and tension. And if you get tension in the tummy, then again, you're having none of that movement, no bowel movements.
Yeah. So it's the gut-brain axis. So our gut has its own nervous system. It's the only organ that will feed up to the brain. Yeah. So do we have anxiety because our gut bacteria is out, or is our anxiety causing this? And it's a vicious cycle between the nervous system really as well. Yeah.
And then one last thing, because when you have colonic hydrotherapy, then it's water's coming in, getting flushed out, and then when you get up from the table and you go to the loo yourself, what always fascinated me from years ago when I had the treatment the first time, there's a little stool in the loo, and you put your feet up with your knees up, and if you still need to go or let anything pass, that's how you do it. And actually, from years ago, when I had my first colonic hydrotherapy, I then introduced that little stool. Also, my son was little, so there was one in the bathroom anyway for him to step up to reach the taps. But I have to say, it's the most comfortable way to poo. With your knees your feet a little bit higher up, so your knees are slightly higher. Yeah. Why is that? Why is that suddenly more comfortable or easy?
I mean, this is what in a lot of European countries, they do like that. In Asia, you have the squat toilets.
Of course, it's squat. Yeah.
Kind of supporting the intestines. If you're sitting upright, you're in this position. But if you've got the boxes or the platform to push your feet up, you're sitting in this position, so it allows the stools and everything to come out much easier. So you're
so it's literally just a manner of sort of, it's a bit like giving birth lying down or giving birth sort of in all fours, the same thing, just it's accommodating the path and using gravity better. Listen, if nothing else, if you take nothing else away from this video today, honestly, the next time you have a poo, put your feet up onto something and you will see it's just far easier. That, and if you occasionally, I've said with clients too, if you are quite constipated or really struggling to pass a stool, just to massage your own belly while you're on the loo. It just helps relax and move it along.
Go clockwise as well. Don't go the other way so you start
clockwise pushing. As if you were drawing it on somebody. So
if your pubic bone is 12 and then your
so that way, right, exactly. So to the right, then to the top, to the left.
That's it. So you're going the way of the bowel.
Thanks so much for talking so honestly and openly with me about this. I've got a real passion about just making people more aware about this. And I mean, so it's a bit of a giggle, but I've referred quite a few clients to yourself, and I've had a few clients who have then actually had it elsewhere. But it's fantastic treatment, and certainly one to consider just as a general upkeep. You don't even have to do it because there's an issue. You can do it as a sort of reset every so often.
I mean, this isn't a new treatment.
It's not the latest thing. No.
This isn't a new thing. We've always done it. We've always known bowel cleansing is good. So if your bowel's working pretty well, then usually for anyone that comes and has a colonic, we usually say do 3 treatments fairly close together. They could be a week apart. They could be a month apart. You don't want to go much over that because you just keep redoing the same thing. Then you know what it's like to have a good digestive system working. Some people, it does take more than 3 treatments, but you know, take case by case. And then after that, if your bowels are going well, you're going at least once a day, it's a nice healthy poo that's coming out, then to maintain good bowel health and good digestive health, to have a colonic between, say, every 1 month to every 3 months. Some people will come once a year and that's all they need. So I mean, it's person by person, we're all very different. For me personally, I have a colonic about every 8 to 12 weeks, but I've got people that come once monthly. I don't really recommend you do it more than that as a long-term thing, just because you need this gut bacteria to keep your immune system there. If you want to do it more, then make sure you're taking probiotics or you're getting probiotic implants done every time. But, you know, it's not great to rely on supplements all the time. You want to let your body do things naturally as well.
Supplements are useful, but ultimately you need to start, you know, making sure you get it from food and regulate that and look to that, because that's an easier way to manage it. Just to say that you then, you will do the colonics and often then prescribe supplements with it, or make dietary recommendations with it depending on the person's needs. So it's not just a case of go there, get flushed out, and you sort of left high and dry. It's a real education. That's what I found. I always find it's not like a lot of other treatments. You know, you go and you depend on the professional and you do as you're sort of told. But with colonics, I feel it's one of those real educative treatments. Like you come away more informed about what your body's doing, what to look out for, and you can take more sort of control of your own health.
And that's all part of it. You know, the more we educate, it's up to you then to do it, because a colonic isn't going to do it, or an apple a day isn't going to do it. It's going to come with everything. The more you know yourself, then the more informed you are with your choices as well.
Thank you so much, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks, Michelle.